Yeah. Hi guys, good evening. In the last session, we discussed about Spring MVC form tag library. So what is the purpose of Spring MVC form tag library? It is used to simplify our forms development. So when we are developing our forms by using tag library, we need to establish some mapping between our Java class and the form fields. Now, so to map the Java class with the form, we are going to use model attribute. Then how to represent the mapping between the field and variable? How to represent the mapping between the field and variable? To represent the mapping between the field and variable, we will use path attribute. Okay. So our application is ready. We are able to implement that form and we are able to capture form data also. In this student controller, I'm writing two methods. One method is basically used to load the index page. When the page is loading, I'm calling init method. What is the purpose of this init method? To load the drop downs data to required for the form. Now let's go here, make a request localhost colon 8080 localhost colon 8080. Our form is displaying as expected. Now here, when I submit that form, it will send a post request to my controller. In the JSP, I have given action is equal to save, model attribute is equal to student, method is equal to post. When I click on this submit button, it will send a post request to save method. Save is the URL pattern belongs to another method. Save is the URL pattern belongs to another method. In this method, if you see, student object is parameter, model object is parameter. What is this student representing? What is this model representing? Student representing, we are getting form data. We are getting form data. Model is used to store, our model is used to send the data from controller to UI. In the first method, I'm calling init. In the second method also, I'm calling init. Why we are calling init in the first method as well as in the second method? Right. So here, for loading my form, I need some courses in the drop down. Okay. I'm loading that by using form options items value. Similarly, I'm having checkboxes. I want to display multiple checkboxes. For that also, I'm using items attribute. So to load this form, courses required, timings required. Courses coming in the drop down, timings coming in the checkboxes. That data I'm sending from my controller to UI by using this model. Init method is available. In the first method, I'm calling the init. In the second method, I'm calling the init. Instead of this, we can use one annotation called init binder. What is the annotation I'm using now? Init binder. Let me remove this method from here and let me remove this method from here. I'm writing one method called init method. For the init method, I have given a annotation called init binder. So annotation that identified methods that initialize, which will be used for populating command and form object arguments of annotated handler methods. Now let us try. This init method is getting called or not. So let me right click, refresh, run as boot application. Right click, run as boot application. Clear the console. Now go here, localhost colon 8080. Binding result not available. Neither binding result nor target object student available as request attribute. Init binder is not calling. If init binder is called, then items will come. Items are not coming means init binder is not getting called. Neither binding result nor target of being student available as request attribute. Init binder. Get mapping. Guys, I need to check this. Why this method is not getting called? Init binder is the annotation. Actually, whenever a request comes to any of our method, then that should call the init binder. I will check why it is not working. Fine. As of now, I will call init method here. Why I am calling init method in the both methods, guys? What is the reason of calling the init in both these methods? Right? To load the data that is required for both, that is required to load my index page. In the index page, I need student object because I'm using student as a model attribute. I need courses I'm using for my drop down data, and I need timings I'm using for my checkboxes. Right now, so form is loaded. Let me submit my form data. Right, form is getting loaded. Enter some details: Rani, email ID, gender, course, timings. Click on save. Data saved and form is reloaded. When the form is reloaded, we are getting the data as expected. Now go here. If you go to the console, now there is no exception available. Form data is captured or form data is not captured. Form data is captured. Now here, I want to store this form data into database table. I want to store this form data into database table. Now, let me use the table, use SBMS, show tables. Show tables. Now, here we don't have any table for a student. Now, I will create one entity class, guys. Observe. I'm going to create one entity and I need to create a repository. To create the entity and repository, we need to have data JPA dependency. In our project, data JPA dependency available or not available? I have selected only WebStarter, DevTools, and Lombok Embed Jasper. No data JPA. Let me add data JPA dependency along with the driver, MySQL driver. Now let us select this data JPA and MySQL driver. Good. Let's go here. Go to Pomda. Spring Boot starter data JPA and MySQL dependency I'm adding. So once these dependencies are added, let me create one entity class. What is entity? What is entity? Class which is used to map with the database table. New class. I'm taking this as entity. Here I'm taking the class name as student entity. I'm taking a class with a name called student entity. Now, in this student entity, what are the variables? I'm going to take these variables. Now, these variables, here timings, I will not take as array. I want to save that data in the single column. Now, for this, let us go for student entity, @entity, @data, @entity, @data, and @table. Now for the table, I'm giving the name as student enquiries. Student enquiries. Like this, I'm writing one entity class. Now let us create repository interface. New interface, student repository. Repository. Okay. Student repository. Click on finish. Now, this is normal interface. I want to make this as a JPA interface. For that, extends the properties from JPA repository, that is student entity. Student entity ID, that is integer. ID, that is integer. Perfect. So with this, we are able to create one entity class and we are able to create one repository also. Now, generally in the project, controller will call the repository or service should call the repository? Controller will call the repository or service will call the repository? Service will call the repository. Now here I'm having a class called student service. We can write a interface. In that interface, we can write the methods to implement. Fine. I don't have an interface. I have a class directly. Now inside this service, I want to write a method to insert the record into database table. Guys, if you observe, student is a class, right? What is the purpose of the student class here? Come on, what is the purpose of student class here? Now in this requirement, so this is my form. This is my form. 1 minute. There is a small logic here. This is my form. To map our form data, I am having one class called student. So student class is called as form binding class. Student class is called as form binding class. I am mapping my form data to the student class. That is called form binding. My table is different. My form is different now. Table is different. Form is different. To map our form data, I'm taking student class. And if you go to the table, in the database table, I want to map my database table to the Java class. To map the database table to the Java class, I'm taking entity class. So here, form binding, one class is available. Table binding, one class is available. Table data, I want to map to one Java class. To map table data to the Java class, I'm taking entity. That is one class, right? And to map form data, I'm taking one more class. In the real time, we should not use entity class for form binding for the table mapping. Form binding classes will be separate and the entity classes will be separate. Now here I am doing the same thing. When user submit the form, then we are getting the form data into form binding object. User is going to submit my form. When user submit the form, form data will be coming in the form of student object. But repository knows about the student or repository knows about the student entity. Repository know about the student entity. Now you see, I'm going to write a method public void public or boolean anything public boolean save student. So here I'm taking student object as a method parameter. What is a student object here? Student is a binding class. Now I want to insert the record into table private student repository, that is repository. Let me go for auto wiring. Now when I want to insert a record, what is the method in the repository? What is the method in the repository? Repository dot save. Save method, can I pass student as a parameter for the save method? Will it accept that or it will not accept that? It will not accept. Repository save method expecting what? Entity object. It is expecting entity object. But what I am passing? Binding object. Right. Binding is to capture only form data. To insert the record into table, we need to go for entity object. Now, data is available in the entity. And I need to copy the data is available in the binding object. Binding object data, I need to copy into entity object. Now, this entity I can pass for the save method. Are you guys clear? Observe. User is submitting the form. When user submit the form data coming in the form of student object. Now, that student is only for the form binding, not for the table mapping. Table mapping I have done by using entity class. Now in the service layer, I have a method called save student method. Who will call the service method? Controller will call the service method. What data controller is having? Controller having entity object or controller having binding object? Controller is having binding object. Let me, service is already injected. Now here my controller will call service dot save student of binding object. Okay. Controller is calling the service method. What object passing for the service method? Binding object. Now in the service, I need to save the record. In order to save the record, I need to pass the entity. But actually data is available in the binding object. I need to insert the record with the entity object. Now we need to copy the data from one object to another object. In order to copy the data from one object to another object, there is a concept called bean utils. Bean utils dot copy properties. Source and target. Source and target. Where is our data? Our data is available in the binding object. To which object we want to copy? We want to copy into entity object. Forget about this save. Forget about this save. Return some false value for time being. Okay. Now here, let me print this object system.out.println. System.out.println. First I am printing student. After copying the data, I am printing my entity object. System.out.println entity. Here guys, when controller is calling this method, save student, I am printing my binding data. Then I am copying the binding data to entity and I am printing my entity object. See the difference here. We can run in the debug mode also. Right click, debug as boot application. I'm trying to run my application in the debug mode. It failed. Refresh, right click, debug as boot application. Oh, see here, error. It is asking database configuration. Did I configure database details? No, I need to configure my database properties. Okay, close this. Yeah, only view resolver is available. Now I am configuring my data source properties. Close the unrelated projects, refresh. Now right click, run as boot application. Go to console. For entity class, we have done one mistake. @ID not available. First of all, where is the ID? Private integer student ID. @ID and @generated value. @generated value strategy is equal to identity strategy. Generated value strategy is equal to identity. Strategy is equal to identity. Fine. This is my entity class. Perfect. Refresh, clear the console, right click, run as boot application. Yeah, it started. My table got created. Now go here, refresh this page. Page got refreshed. Now I'm not saving the record, guys. I'm not saving the record. Just I want to understand how the data coming from the UI, how to send the data to the database. Right click, debug as boot application. Go to controller. In the controller, save method is available. I'm keeping a breakpoint in the save method. Okay. I'm keeping a breakpoint in the save method. Actually, this should be available below. Right. Save method is available. Whenever you send a post request, it will go to this method. What this method is doing? Calling the service method. Let us verify. Load the form. Form is loaded. Enter the details. Course. Timings. Click on save. There is a breakpoint. Now observe. Request came to controller method. The data came in the form of student object. What details are coming? Name is Raju, email ID, gender, course, timings also coming. Now fine. After this, I'm calling the service method. Controller is calling my service method. Go inside the service method. Inside the service method, I am printing that object, student object I am printing. So student object is a binding class object that the data is printed. After that, what I am doing now? I am using beanutils.copy properties. What is the meaning of beanutils.copy properties? I want to copy the data from one object to another object. Now, copying the properties. Again, see that in the student class, all the properties are available. Name value coming, email value coming, gender is coming, course is coming, timings also coming. After doing copy properties, copy properties method will take two parameters. One is source parameter, second one is target parameter. That means from which object you want to copy the properties to which object. What is your source object? What is your target object? Source nothing but in which object we have the data. In the binding object we have the data. That data I want in the entity object. So first parameter is the source, second parameter is the target. Now after copying that, print the entity object. Now you see entity SID null, that is a primary key value, will generate by identity generator. Name is Raju, copied, email copied, gender copied, course copied, timings not copied. Are you guys clear? So now why it is not copying? Let's observe. Here, if we go for student class and student entity class, here guys, when you want to copy the data from one object to another object, the variables and data types should be same. The variables and data types should be same. But in the student class and student entity class, variables and data types same or not same? One variable data type is not same. Here timings variable having array. Why I am using array here? User can select more than one checkbox. So that's why multiple values can come from the UI for the timings. That's why I'm taking that as a array. But in the database, I want to insert the timings in the single column. I want to insert that in the single column. So in the entity class, I'm taking the data type as a string. In the binding class, I'm taking as a string array. So as this data type of the timings are not matching in the both classes, copy properties method not copying the data for the timings, but for the name, for the email, for the gender, for the course, here whatever the variables available, data types available, same thing is available in my entity also. As the properties are matching in the both classes, it is able to copy the data from one object to another object. But coming to the timings variable, in the entity class, the data type is a string. In the binding class, it is a string array. That's why the data is not copied. Now see, whatever the data available in the student class, it is copied to the entity class. Here timings available as morning, here timings available as null value. So whichever the properties are not matching, we need to set the data manually. How I will do that? Observe. Student entity available, entity dot set timings. Where the timings? In the student class, timings are available. Arrays dot toString of student dot get timings. Okay. From the student object, that is my binding object. From the student object, I'm getting the timings. I'm converting into string. Actually, timings is array in my binding class. More than one value can come. Those values I'm converting into string. Those values I'm setting to entity timings. In the entity timings, data type is a string. So user selecting the data in the form and user submitting the form. When user submitted the form data coming to binding object, In the binding object, timings is a array because more than one value can come. But here in the database, I want to store that in the single column. So that's why in the entity class, I have taken that as a string variable. Here I am copying the data from my binding object to entity object by using copy properties. When you go for copy properties, source class variables, target class variables, and the data types also should be same. Here in this scenario, student class data type is a string array. Entity class data type is a string. That's why timings will not be copied. As the timings are not copied, I am setting the timings to the entity by converting them into string value, comma separated value. Now observe, go to our database, repository.save.entity. Let me return true value. Okay. In the controller class, I will get this boolean is saved. Boolean is saved. Suppose if it is really saved, then I want to send a success message to the UI. Got it? So this is my student controller. Observe my student controller. Handle submit button is available. It is taking form data as a parameter. With that form data, it is calling my service method. In the service method, I am copying the data from the binding object to entity object. How to copy the data from one object to another object? How to copy the data from one object to another object? By using copy properties. When you are going for copy properties, what is the important point we need to remember? Source class, target class variables should be same and the data type also should be same. Got it? You may ask a question. Sir, why to take two classes? Why can't we use one class for the binding, same class for the entity? That is not recommended. In the real time, whatever the data coming from the form, whatever the columns are available in the table may not match. Right? My table structure will be different. My form structure will be different. In the form, how many checkboxes are there? 3 checkboxes are available. Can I take 3 columns in the table for timings? Can I take 3 columns in the table for timings? No, we should not take 3 columns. In one column, we need to save all the timings that selected by the user. So my form structure, my table structure is not same. When the form structure, table structures are not same, form binding class will be separate, entity class will be separate. Are you guys understanding? Right. In the form, I am having timings as 3 checkboxes. User may select 1 value, user may select 2 values, user may select 3 values. Can I take 3 columns for timing 1, timing 2, timing 3? No, we should not take like that. In the database, column should be only 1. In that column, all the timings should be populated. Are you able to follow this? So that's why form binding class is separate, entity class is separate. When user submit the form, data will come in the form of a binding object, but in the database, I need to insert by using entity object. Input I am getting as a binding and output I need to give as a entity. I will copy the data from the binding to the entity. How I am copying the data from binding to entity, guys? How we are copying the data from binding to entity? Copy properties. What is the point we need to remember when we are going for copy properties? Source class, target class variables and data types should be same. In our scenario, source class variables, target class variables are same or not same? All the variables are same except one variable. What is that one variable? Timing. In the binding, what is the data type? Array. In the entity, string. So that variable data cannot be copied. So that's why what I am doing, entity dot set timings. Manually, I am setting the data to the entity by taking the data from the binding. I am getting the binding data, converting the array data to the string data, and I am setting to the entity. Are you clear? What is the code? These 3 lines are very important. I got the data in the form of a binding. Binding data I'm copying to entity. One property data type is mismatching. That's why that property data I'm setting manually, converting the array value to the string data. Now go here, run our application, debug as boot application, console, clear the console. Console got cleared. Good. Go to web page, load the form. Form is loaded. Go to table, show tables, table name. Student enquiries. Yes. Now let me go for select star from student enquiries. Select star from student enquiries. Any record available in the table, guys? Record available or not available? Not available. My project is started in the debug mode. Let me clear the console. Keep a breakpoint. In the controller method, I'm having a breakpoint. Select the data, email, gender, course, timings. I'm selecting 2 values, 2 checkboxes. Click on save. Breakpoint is there. It came to controller method. Controller method taking the student object. Do we have the data in the student object? Yes. How many timings are available? 2. Morning, evening available. So here controller method calling service method. Go inside the service. Right. In the service, first data available in the student object. Let us print that data. Clear the console. Print the data. Student object is printed. All the values coming from the form, name, email, gender, course, timings, printing. Okay. Now I am creating entity object. When I create the entity object, any data available in the entity object, guys? In the 25 line, I created object for the entity. In my entity object, data is available or data is not available? Data is not available. When the data is not available for the entity, I'm executing copy properties. What is the purpose of copy properties? Source to target. Now F6. After copying this, can you check the entity? Yes. Can you check the entity? Red color coming. Red color means modified. After creating the object, those properties got modified. Which properties modified? Name modified, gender modified, email modified, course modified. SID, that is a primary key value, will generate by generator. Timings are copied or timings are not copied? Timings are not copied. Why timings are not copied? Data type mismatch. Now what I am doing in the line number 29? What I am doing in the line number 29? Manually, I'm setting the timing by taking from the binding. Arrays.toString. What is the meaning of arrays.toString? Convert array values into string format, comma separated. Now F6. Now check the entity. Now check the entity timings. Timings are modified or not modified? Timings are modified. What is there? Morning, evening is available. Once the timings are changed, I am printing my entity. Now let us see my entity. In the entity, timings available as a string. Right. Then I am calling repository.save. What is the purpose of this save method? What is the purpose of this save method? Save the record into database table and return true. Before that, go to database, select our table, select star from student enquiries. Now, can you check this record is inserted or not? Student ID 1 generated, course is there, email, gender, name, timings. Timings inserting in multiple columns or single column? Single column. I am converting array to string. How I am converting array to string? Arrays.toString. So once it is done, F8. Then success message will be printed. Data got saved. Data got saved. Are you clear with this? Yes, fine. So with this, we are able to develop our registration form and we are able to insert the record also into database table. Which table I am using now? Where is my database table? My database table is available in the MySQL database. Got it? Any questions on this? Online people, able to understand? Online people, are you able to understand how we are inserting the form data into database table? Yes. Okay. Good. Perfect. So with this, we completed one web application to capture form data and storing that form data into database table. Perfect. Now, next one, guys, there is a concept called embedded database. There is a concept called embedded database concept is available. Currently, we are using embedded server. Am I deploying my application to the server or boot is taking care of the deployment? Boot is taking care of that deployment. Can I call that as a embedded server? Yes, we can call it as a embedded server. So boot will give Tomcat as embedded server. Boot will give Tomcat as embedded server, which is web starter is giving that dependency. Which one is giving the dependency? Our web starter is giving that dependency. Web starter dependency giving embedded server. Whenever we run our web application, whenever we have web starter in the project, then that server will start automatically. See here, right click, run as boot application. Console, go to this application. Now if you see here, my application is started. Can you see what is this? Starting Tomcat. Tomcat server is coming with the port number 8080. Am I installing the Tomcat or it is starting along with my application? It is starting along with my application, that is called as embedded server. What is the embedded server we are getting? Apache Tomcat as a embedded server. Good. Similarly, guys, in the Spring Boot, we can use one concept called embedded database. There is a concept called embedded database concept is available. You guys are struggling to install Oracle MySQL databases in our system, right? When we go for the Spring Boot, Boot is providing support for a database called embedded database. Embedded database is also called as in-memory database. Embedded database is also called as in-memory database. In-memory database nothing but temporary database. In-memory database is called as temporary database. Understand this. In-memory DB is called as temporary database. Whenever application started, then a database also will start. When you stop the application, database also will be stopped. Sir, this database is only for learning purpose, not to use in the real-time project. Embedded database only for our learning purpose. I want to set up one database to run my application. I need the database only for 1 hour. That's it. Once my application execution got completed, I don't need that database. Suppose I want to develop one application. In that application, I want to use a database to store customers' data. That data should be available permanently for lifelong. Facebook application using the database, Gmail using the database, Naukri, IRCTC, all these applications are having database. Those databases are permanent databases. Lifelong the data should be available in the database. Now my requirement is, I got one new requirement in the project. I need to develop one Spring Boot application backend REST API and front end with the React JS. I want to develop the application. I want to see how to integrate React JS with the Spring Boot, how to perform the CRUD operations. So now, how many days I will develop that application? That is my R&D. I will do R&D 1 day or 2 days. So how many days I need that data? Do I need the data for lifelong? That is my practice purpose. I want the data only when my application is running, data should be available. When my application is stopped, I don't need that data. In such scenarios, people will do practice on the embedded database. What is embedded database? Embedded database is also called as in-memory database. In-memory DB is called as temporary database. When application starts, example for this embedded database is H2DB. H2DB is called as a embedded database. When you use the H2DB, when application starts, H2DB also will start. When application starts, H2DB will start. If I stop my application, database will be available or database will not be available? Will not be available. When application starts, H2DB will start. When application stopped, database will be deleted. Database will be deleted. So now, if you want to practice some concepts with the database, then you no need to install Oracle or MySQL. Immediately within fraction of seconds, you can set up a Spring Boot application with the database communication. That the database I'm going to take as a embedded database. It is something like a embedded server. What is this embedded server? What is the embedded server, guys? Whenever boot application is started, then my server also getting started. So once application is stopped, server will be stopped. Similarly, when my application is started, I want a database to start. When my application is stopped, I want to stop my database also. Which database we can use as a embedded database? We can use H2 database as a embedded database. Able to follow me? Now let's observe. Go to the project. Let us create one project with the embedded database. Let us create one project with the embedded database. File, new, starter project. Let me create this as a 16th application, 16 WebMVC H2DB application. H2DB application. What is the H2? What is H2, guys? H2 is my embedded database. WebMVC H2 database application I'm creating. Click on next, Lombok, data JPA, web starter, dev tools. Do I need MySQL driver? Not required. When we need MySQL driver? When we are connecting with the MySQL database, then only we need MySQL driver. Now I want to connect with the H2 database. To connect with the H2 database, H2 driver is required. To connect with the Oracle database, Oracle driver required. To connect with the MySQL database, MySQL driver required. To connect with the H2 database, H2 driver is required. Let us select a dependency called H2. What is this, guys? H2 database. Now see what all the dependencies I'm adding. I'm adding dev tools. What is the purpose of dev tools? What is the purpose of dev tools? It is used to restart my server when my code is changed. What is Lombok? Setters and getters. Data JPA. Data JPA for the database communication. H2 for the embedded database. WebMVC to develop a web application. Click on next and click on finish. Good. Yes. Yeah. Project is created. Go to pom.xml. You can see data JPA added. Starter web is added. Dev tools also added. What is this? H2. What is this? H2. That is a embedded database. That is called as temporary database. What is the meaning of embedded database? When application starts, database will start. When application is stopped, database will stop. Then what is the use? If you want to develop a application with a database for practice purpose, this concept is called as POC development, guys. In the real time, we will go for a concept called POC. POC stands for proof of concept. POC stands for proof of concept. In the project, when we want to do some experiment, in my project, if you want to do some experiment, now directly we are not going to do experiment on the real project. If I do experiment on the real project, what will happen? What will happen? Total project will be collapsed. Now, my project is available. Assume that my project is using JSP as a presentation technology. Now, JSP is outdated. Now, I want to remove the JSP. I want to keep the Angular. Directly, can I go and delete all the JSPs and start writing the Angular code? No. Why? First of all, Angular is new to us. Angular is new to us. So how to create the Angular project? How to establish the relation between, communication between Angular and Spring Boot? How to communicate with the database? I want to develop one simple project by using Angular and Spring Boot. If I am able to develop Angular and Spring Boot, if I am able to integrate, then I will get the confidence. Okay, I'm good with the Angular. I can start changing the UI from JSP to Angular. So now here, when we are going to do such kind of analysis for our team members, we need to give the demo. Guys, from last 2 days, I'm working on the Angular Spring Boot integration. I developed a small project by using Angular and Spring Boot that is called POC, proof of concept. Like this, we can develop Angular and Spring Boot. We can integrate the Angular and Spring Boot. This is the demo. This is my code. I will give the demo to my team members. So the demo that we are giving to our team members is called as POC. POC stands for proof of concept. Now in the project, when you don't have a task to do, then your Scrum Master or your technical lead will ask you to work on the POC. That means you do some research on the Java, you do some research on the Spring Boot, you identify some new thing that is helpful for the project, you show the demo. When we are developing this kind of POC projects, we are going to use a H2 database. How many days we will use that POC? Maximum 2 to 3 days or 1 week. When I am running my project, I need a database. Once my project demo is completed, I don't need that database. In such a kind of POC development, we will go for embedded database. Are you guys clear? Now, what is the difference between MySQL database and H2 database? MySQL database is a external database, that is a permanent database. H2 is a embedded database. It is a temporary database. Are you clear? When we are developing the real project, then we will go for MySQL. When we are developing a POC, then we will go for embedded database. What is the meaning of POC? Proof of concept. What is the meaning of proof of concept? Any R&D work, any demo that we want to give, that we are going to call it as a POC. Now, I want to perform operations with a Spring Boot application. I need one temporary database. I don't want to go for MySQL and I don't want to go for Oracle. I want one temporary database. And one more thing, in the real time, company will give you one laptop. In that laptop, can you install MySQL database? Why? In that system, administrator permission is required. Okay, we will not have administrator permission. So if you want to do some practice, you will not have database in the laptop. In the company laptop, you will not have a database. So at that time, you want to practice some concepts in your laptop. How can you do it? You can practice that with the H2 database. Oracle database, MySQL database, you cannot install in the office laptop. If you want to install that software, you need to raise a ticket with the IT team. IT team will ask, why you need database in your system? Company database already there in the other computer. Why you want to create a database in your laptop? We don't install that. If you don't have a database, you can't perform your learning process. You can't improve your skill set. To improve my skill set, I want to develop small POCs. Currently working on the Spring Boot. Now I want to do POC on the microservices. I want to do a POC on the Angular with the Spring Boot, React with the Spring Boot. So to do those POCs, I need a database. Instead of going for the real MySQL or Oracle, you can practice with the H2. H2 database will come when you run your application, database will come. When you stop your application, database will go. Are you clear? Right. What is embedded server and what is embedded database? Boot will give Tomcat as a embedded server. Whenever you create a web application by using Spring Boot, server will come automatically. You no need to install the server separately. And when you go for H2DB, database also will come along with your application. You no need to set up the database separately. Got it? Now I have created my project. I have created my project with a data JPA and I created with a H2 database. Now let us go and configure data source properties. Let us go and configure data source properties. What are the properties we need to configure? Spring.datasource.url. Spring.datasource.url. What is that? Spring.datasource.url. And next one, spring.datasource.username. Not DBCP, guys. Spring.datasource.username. Similarly, spring.datasource.password. Datasource.password and driver class. Spring.datasource.driver class name. Perfect. URL, username, password, driver class. Here, driver class is org.h2.driver. Automatically it is coming. So if you want to connect with the MySQL database, what is the driver? com.mysql.cj.driver. If you want to connect with the H2 database, H2 driver. What is the driver class name for that? org.h2.driver. Password, username, up to you. You can set any username, any password. I will take it as a ABC and ABC. No problem. Username and password, whatever you set here, with that username and password, your database will start. Username and password, whatever you configure in your application properties, it will take the same username and password. Is it permanent database or temporary database? Temporary, right? URL. So JDBC URL we need to configure. JDBC colon H2 colon mem colon testdb. Like that. I'm writing the URL. Here JDBC colon H2 colon mem colon testdb. That testdb is my schema name. You can give any name for that. You can give any name for that. Now, what I have done in my project, I just created one project with JPA, web and H2. And for the H2 database, I'm adding my properties. Data source URL, data source username, password, driver class. What is the URL? JDBC colon H2 colon mem colon testdb. And what is the username? You can give anything. You can give anything. I'm giving the username as ABC, password also as a ABC. And what is the driver class name? org.h2.driver. Now, refresh our project, run our project. Let us check it. Database will start or not. What are the steps I have done? Project created, database properties are configured. That's it. Run our application, close unrelated projects, already done. Yeah. Right click, run as boot application. Now observe. My application started or not? Yes. What is the server it is using? Tomcat. What is the port number? 8080. Next one. Can you see here? H2 console is available at /H2 console. Database available at JDBC H2 mem : testDB. Can you say connection pool also started? Now it started H2 database. How to access H2 database? Localhost : 8080/H2 console. Perfect. My database is open. That is a H2 database. It is called as a embedded database. Now, what is the JDBC URL I have given in the properties file? What is the JDBC URL? JDBC : H2 : mem : testDB. Copy that URL and keep that URL here. Whatever the URL we are copying, take that URL and give that URL. What is the username I have given? ABC. What is the password I have given? ABC. Now there is an option called test connection. Really, can we connect with this database or not? Let us test our connection. Can we connect with this database or not? Let us test the connection. Test connection. What is this? Test successful. Now password. What is the password? ABC. Click on connect. Okay. I connected to my database. My database is available. Now you can write your queries here. You can create the table. You can insert the data, update the data, delete the data, retrieve the data. If I stop my application, database will be available or will not be available? Database will not be available. If your application is running, then database will run. If your application is stopped, then database also will be stopped. Now, I inserted some records into the table and I have stopped my application. Then what will happen? Data will be available or data will be deleted? Database itself will be deleted. Forget about the data. Our database itself will be deleted. Now, let me stop my application. I stopped my application. After stopping the application, can I access my database? Database is accessible or not accessible? Not accessible. Why it is not accessible? Application got stopped. When the application got stopped, my database also will be stopped. Is it external database or it is embedded database? Embedded database. What is the use of going for embedded database? What is the use of going for embedded database? Temporary practice purpose. Practice purpose. When your application is running, then database will start. When your application is stopped, database also will be stopped. Are you guys clear? Now, good. Let us start. I want to create one form and I want to insert the data into the table and I want to retrieve the data from the table. Right, just inserting the data and retrieving the data. I want to do that by using embedded database. Are you guys clear with this? Right. Now, what are the steps that I have done? Can you tell me what steps I have done as of now? Create Spring Starter project with below dependencies. What are the dependencies I have used? Come on. I have used Spring Web Starter. I have used Spring Web Starter and I have used Data JPA Starter. Data JPA Starter and I have used H2 database. That is the important part, right? H2 database, then I have used Lombok, then Dev2. Now there is a problem. When you add the dev tools, it will restart the server. When it restart the server, database also will be restarted. Whatever the data we have, that will be deleted. Right. Now after this, configure data source properties in application.properties file. How I configured the data source properties? Username, password, predefined value or user defined value? User defined value. Whatever you want, you can configure. Now, I'm configuring my data source properties. JDBC : H2 : mem : testDB. Username is equal to ABC. Password is equal to ABC. What is the driver class? org.h2.driver. org.h2.driver. Perfect. Now I want a project. Simple. Let's insert product name, product price, and name, ID, name, price, and quantity. Okay, name, price, and quantity. I want to develop one form with these fields: product name, product price, product quantity. Yes, insert this data into embedded database. Name is a text field, price also text field, quantity is also a text field. Let us have submit button. Good. Submit button. A form. Okay. Now, similarly, I want to display the products in the another page. Product ID, product name, and ID, that is the ID of the product, the name of the product, price of the product, and quantity of the product. I want to display them in a database table. Okay, right. One, some name like RAM, price 4,000, quantity some 2, something like this, and ID 2. Then this is hard disk, and price is some 6,000, quantity 10. Right. Now similarly 3 here, mouse, price is 500, quantity 20. Like this, I want to insert the data into database table, and the same data I want to retrieve and I want to display in the web page. So this application I want to develop by using embedded database. Okay. Correct. Can we use Bootstrap also? Perfect. So like this, I want to develop one application like this. Here, I want to insert the record and I want to retrieve the records from the web application. Yes, here I will have view records. Hyperlink. Yeah. So you can insert. When you insert the record, success message will be displayed on the same page. And when you click on view records, it has to display the records in the another page. From another page, navigation link will be available. Go back or add the new record that will be available. So this is our requirement. Can we develop this? How much time it will take? How much time it will take? 1 day. Hardly 20 minutes. And one more thing, guys, when you go for embedded database, if you create the entity, automatically table will be created. You no need to create the table in the database. If you have the entity class, table will be created automatically. Let us see this. Let us see this. So here I have created my project. Observe, I created a project with dependencies and I configured my data source properties. Go to this, create one entity class and see the database. What is the behavior? New class. I'm taking this as a product entity, only one class. Right now, let me keep this as entity class, product entity. Product entity. Let me make this as an entity by using annotation called @entity, and let me make @data. Fine. Private integer product ID, private string name, private long quantity. Right now, primary key is required, name, price, and quantity. Yeah. Private double price. let us go for @ID and go for generated value strategy. If you don't give anything, by default it will take it as a sequence, right? So generated value I am giving. Let me create a repository, new interface, that is repository interface, product repository. Let me go for product repository. Yes, extends from JPA repository. My class is product entity. What is the data type? Primary key. Perfect. Yeah. So I just created my project with dependencies. I added properties. I added entity class and repository interface. Can I run the project and see database behavior? Yes. Right click on the project, refresh, run as boot application. Go to the console. Yes, application started. Clear the console. Go here, localhost :8080/h2 console. Database is available. Now, password I have given as ABC. Click on connect. I have connected. Can you check this? Product entity table is created. Select star from product entity. Any records available or records are not available? Records are not available. Did I ask Spring Boot to create the table? Am I writing auto DDL? Check it. Do I have auto DDL in my properties file or auto DDL not available? Auto DDL is also not available. By default, it is inserting the record into table. By default, it is creating the table. If I have 10 entities, for every entity, one table will be created. Now go to this database. You can see what are the tables it has created. What is the table? Product entity table, PID, PName, price, and quantity. If you select this table name, query is coming by default. Select star from table name. Click on run. Now what happened? Select star from product entity. No records are available in the table. Now, so if you just to create the entity and repository, the tables are getting created in the database. So now, can you develop this application for tomorrow session with the embedded database? Yes. Embedded database. So embedded databases are used for POC development. Note. Embedded databases are used for proof of concept development. And whenever you create entity class, then by default, it is going to create the table based on the entity. Now, can you work on this requirement, guys? Can you work on this requirement? Yes, perfect. Any questions, anyone? Same syntaxes. Everything is same. The only thing is, instead of that database, we are using this database. Guys, how to use embedded database in the Spring Boot application? What is the first step we need to do to add that? Add H2 dependency in pom.xml file. That is one point. So this is my dependency that I am adding. Adding H2 dependency in the pom.xml. So only adding the dependency sufficient or not sufficient? Not sufficient. Then what we need to do? We need to configure H2 data source properties in the pom.xml. So add the H2 dependency in the pom.xml, then configure H2 data source properties. Configure H2DB data source properties in application.properties file. We need to do that configuration. Okay. Yes, this is my application.properties file. In this file, I am configuring that credentials. Username and password, it's up to you. Whatever you want, you can configure. Driver class URL, don't change that. Driver class URL, we need to keep like this. Now, once these properties are added, how to check the embedded database working or not? How to check the embedded is working or not? Once application started, we can access H2DB console using below URL, right? So go to our browser. How I am accessing H2 database? H2 console. Let me remove this. Now, if you access this URL, then database will be available. Whatever the username and password we have given in the properties file, with that username and password, you can connect to the database and you can see your tables are getting created or not. If you create an entity class, then table will be created. Okay. You no need to write auto DDL also. You no need to write the auto DDL also. If you create the entity class, then table will be created automatically. Good. So fine. So with this, we understood how to copy the data from one object to another object. How to copy the data from one object to another object? By using beanutils.copy properties. Right. Remember, source target variables and data types should be same. Next one. Today we discussed about what is a H2. What is a H2? H2 is a embedded database. What is the purpose of H2? Temporary purpose. If you want to practice anything, then you can go for H2. Yes, good guys. In real project, how to connect with the DB, that we'll discuss in the real project classes. Okay. Yep. Unmute guys. Online people. Any questions?
Yes, sir. Hi, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hi.
Sir, I had doubt in last project, sir, in controller class. Can you
Tell
open
me.
this controller class?
Tell me what is your doubt.
Class. Sir, please open controller class.
Which one?
Controller class, sir.
Huh?
Controller. In last project. Yeah, this one. Sir, here is a not map.
Your voice is breaking, madam. I can't hear you.
Hello, sir.
This is the controller.
Hello, sir. Am I audible now?
No, I'm getting a lot of disturbance.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir.
Anyone else, guys? Any question? Okay. Good. Fine, guys. Please try to practice that example that we discussed today. We'll meet in the tomorrow session. Tomorrow,
sir.
We'll work on that project. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, sir. Tell me.
Sir, if you are using embedded database, when the server got restarted, our previous data
will be lost. When you are using embedded database, if a server is restarted, our data will be lost. Embedded database just for practice purpose, sir, not for real project.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi.
Sir, please open controller class.
1 minute. I think I closed it, madam. Yeah, tell me, what is your doubt?
Sir, in the first method, sir, you didn't map anything in gate mapping annotation, sir. Only
URL slash means empty URL pattern. No need to give anything.
Then, sir, how it rendered from UI to controller, sir?
localhost colon 8080, that means it will check for a method which is having /URL pattern. Our method is having /URL pattern.
Okay, sir. And sir, in real time, as we use now MySQL, sir. In real time, we save this data base in another computer, sir. Sir, how the server is we use in real time, sir? Like in Spring Boot, sir. That Spring Boot is providing server, but in real time, sir.
In the real time also, we will deploy our application with the embedded server.
Means S2 server, sir.
Not the H2. Madam, I told you several times.
Yeah, sir. It's a
H2 database only for practice purpose, not for the real time.
So I'm getting confused, sir, in server and in database, sir. How we use in real time?
What is your confusion?
Like how to use server from another computer, sir, in real time?
In the real time, our project will be packaged as a jar file and our project will run as a jar file. When you run the jar file, Spring Boot will start in the Tomcat server. In the real time also, we'll do the same thing. Database will be Oracle or MySQL. Database properties we will configure separately. The database server will be different. Tomcat server will be different.
Okay, sir.
Got it?
Got it, sir.
Yeah. Perfect.
This is Mamata.
Yeah, hi.
Sir, ours is a standalone project. We have a requirement like from the input file, we'll receive millions of statements. Each statement in one line will have the data. So those data, each record will be stored into the data structure, sir. But we need to do a POC that we need to store each record data in the in-memory databases. So as you told here, H2 we can use an in-memory database. We can work with that one, sir. Like we have the same requirement. Like whenever application starts, we need that data. Whenever application ends, no, we don't need the data.
Okay.
In that case, we can use this H2 as in-memory database.
Yes, you can use that.
Okay, we will receive millions of statements in the input files.
Yeah, no problem. You can save in the in-memory database. Once your application stopped, the database will be deleted.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Sir, hello.
Yes, sir.
So when you are using dev tools, on the every code change, it will restart the server, na, sir?
Correct, sir.
In H2 database, how it is used? Means
Sir,
if
this is for practice
then...
purpose, man. I told you several times. It is for practice purpose, not to use in the real time. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, guys, I'm expecting you people will complete the requirement on products inserting and product retrieval. This is the task. I want you to complete this task by using H2 database. Right. Work on this task using H2 database. Insert the record and retrieve the records and display those records. I will upload the document in the portal. Please go through that. Thank you, guys.